is breaking news.
That breaking news, a security guard was shot and killed, and another hospital staff member was hurt in a shooting at a Northwest Portland hospital. This is video from the scene at Legacy's Good Samaritan Hospital at Northwest 22nd and Northrop, where police responded just before 11 o'clock this morning. We also just learned in the last hour or so that the suspected shooter was also killed after officers fired multiple shots during a traffic stop in Gresham. We have team coverage tonight to cover all of the angles of this. Our Francis Lynn is at the scene of the officer-involved shooting in Gresham. First, let's get straight to K2's Megan Allison, who is reporting live from Legacy Good Samaritan for the latest on this shooting. And Megan, what do we know about this incident?
Yeah, Barry, Legacy Health confirmed it was those two staff members that were impacted by the gunfire, and they say that no patients were hurt. Now, as you mentioned, it was just before 11 this morning when police responded. That was due to reports of a person with a weapon inside the hospital. Officers say the suspect fired shots on the 5th floor near the birthing center. PPB tells us the security guard was transported to a trauma center where he died from his injuries. The suspect was able to leave the hospital during that time. Police then fanned out across downtown Portland to search for him. Officers say they later learned he left by car, but at one point there was concern he was at Fred Meyer on Burnside.
It was good enough information that they actually did surround the store, evacuated the store of staff. They found that there was no threat there.
We still don't know why the suspect went into the hospital or what vehicle he used to leave the area. Now, as far as the lockdown here, that wrapped up at 4:15 this afternoon. We're live in Northwest Portland. Megan Allison, K2 News.
Megan, thank you. Now we're going to continue our team coverage with, we're going to take you to the scene of that officer-involved shooting, which ended with the death of the suspected hospital shooter. K2's Francis Lynn joins us live there now near Northeast 181st and Everett in Gresham. Fran, tell us what you're seeing there now.
Barry, we're here at Rogers Square, and right now a huge part of the parking lot is still blocked off, and there is a large police presence here still, including Portland Police, Gresham Police, and the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. According to police, the man who was accused of being the shooter over at Legacy Hospital fled in a car. Officers say they stopped that car near here in Gresham, and during the incident, quote, shots were fired by police and the suspect is dead. I did talk to a few neighbors around this area and witnesses near Legacy Hospital when the active shooter threat was underway. They say it was a terrifying experience. I'll have more with them coming up tonight on K2 News at 11. For now, reporting live in Gresham, Francis Lane, K2 News.
A lot more to learn from this, Fran. Thank you.
So I'll just start from the beginning and let you know what information I can release right now. The original call came in just before 11 o'clock this morning with Central Precinct officers. Were responding to a call that there was somebody making threats with a firearm inside the Good Samaritan Hospital. When officers arrived, they started to coordinate with staff in the hospital, including the security staff, and they were advised that shots had been fired. The shots were fired up on the 5th floor of the hospital near the birthing unit. And the information was coming in that there was possibly a suspect in the hospital. Officers relayed that information to additional officers, and we had police officers responding from throughout the city, from across the city. We were even asking for resources from other departments to come and give us a hand. So as the additional help was coming, officers kind of split up their response. They had a couple of officers that went up to the 5th floor and assisted with the crime scene there, where they found a hospital security guard had been shot and was injured. Hospital staff was already well underway in treating the security guard and getting that process started. So additional officers were looking throughout the hospital to try to locate the suspect. During that process, a shelter-in-place protocol was underway to try to minimize the chance that anyone else could be injured. We did not have any information that it was an active shooter situation, but the officers went in with that mindset, that they were looking for a potential active threat in the hospital. So it was very swift, very quick response. The officers gained information that the suspect had actually left the hospital and may have headed down toward Burnside. So additional officers coming in the area responded to try to find the suspect. They actually set up a perimeter, and they were also fanning out throughout the downtown area trying to see if they could locate the suspect. They did have information that the suspect may have been in the Fred Meyer store on 20th Avenue at Burnside, and it was good enough information that they actually did surround the store, evacuated the store of staff, and then eventually they found that there was no threat there and were able to release that. There were no injuries there. And I'm not sure if the suspect was actually ever there. But that was the information we had, and so there's a great deal of police activity in that area at the time. When officers also sent out information about the suspect citywide, and officers were able to determine the suspect was in a vehicle in East Portland, and an East Precinct supervisor located the vehicle and attempted a traffic stop. That stop happened at Northeast 181st and Everett Street in Gresham, where officers determined that the suspect was in that vehicle. The Special Emergency Reaction Team and the Crisis Negotiation Team, which had responded here to the hospital, then responded to the scene in Gresham. We also had Gresham Police, Multnomah County Sheriff's Office responding to that scene. During that encounter, shots were fired by the police, and the suspect is deceased. Meantime, detectives from the homicide unit, Portland Police Homicide Unit, have been working at the hospital to determine what all took place here. Now being a homicide investigation, they had an all-call, and actually they brought in detectives from other units as well. When the officers, or when the detectives interviewed witnesses, hospital staff, and went through to try to obtain evidence, that process is complete, and we shortly ago released the shelter-in-place order for the hospital, and the hospital staff are now in the process of returning the hospital to normal operations. I'm not sure how long that process is going to take, but there has been a tremendous amount of coordination between our agency, Portland Police, and the hospital staff to try to make this as low impact as possible for the patients, because we know it's a working hospital, we have patients who need care, and we were very mindful of that throughout this whole process. So the, I can confirm that the hospital security guard was treated at Good Samaritan, but was transferred to a level 1 trauma center for additional care, and that's where he was pronounced deceased. We still have quite a bit of investigative work to do. Our homicide unit detectives have been here since pretty much the beginning, and they still have a lot of work to do to kind of piece together everything that happened. We have talked to a lot of witnesses, but there certainly is possibility that we have other people out there that have information about what took place here. And so we put contact information for the primary detectives in our press release, and we appreciate anybody that has information that hasn't already spoken to police to reach out to those detectives so they can get a full picture of what's happened. That is the bulk of my statement. I'll take some questions. I think the Legacy staff, do you guys need to set up microphones? Are you okay where you are? Okay. I'll take questions at least from the police side of things, if I can answer any of them. Yeah, I'm still waiting to confirm that. I know that Gresham Police and Multnomah County Sheriffs and Portland Police were all on scene, and I know that the Special Emergency Reaction Team was on scene there. That is all I know for sure, but that's something that we're looking into, and when we're done here, I'll probably head out there to see if I can learn more about what happened at that scene. Out to Gresham, he was in a vehicle. I'm not sure. Yeah, no, sorry about that. Yeah, I can certainly start at the beginning. Did you guys have any other questions before I do that? Okay. Yeah, the motive is a key part of our investigation, and that process is well underway. We know that anytime there's something that is this tragic, this happens at a hospital, a place of safety, that people want to know what happened, and we're mindful of that. We will do everything we can to determine what took place and what prompted this to happen, and put that information out as soon as we can. But right now I would be speaking out of turn if I were to delve into that. I just don't want to speculate and provide information that's not accurate.
We're about to head out, but I just have one more quick question.
Sure.
Earlier you said one or more. Are you able to give us an update on, were there any other people injured, or was it just one?
There was just the one that was shot. There was some question about whether there were additional injuries, but I think in the, I guess, for lack of a better word, the chaos of the incident, there were some questions about whether someone else was hurt, and we're still looking into that, but I can't confirm that anyone else was hurt related to the gunfire. So at this point, all I can say is that we had the security guard who was shot, and despite life-saving efforts, passed away at the hospital. Okay.
Sorry if you already said this.
No, it's fine.
Part of the hospital this happened?
Yeah, it happened on the 5th floor in the birthing center area of the hospital. I don't know if it was inside the birthing center or if it was in the hallway, but it was near that area. Yeah, how's your sound? Your sound is okay? Okay, fair enough. So I'll start at the beginning. For those of you that were on the other side, I apologize. There was some effort to want to get started as soon as possible. So I'll just kind of start at the beginning then. We've kind of released some limited information so far. But this call all began just before 11 o'clock a.m. when Central Precinct officers responded to a report of a threat with a firearm at Good Samaritan Hospital. When officers arrived, they were met by security staff and staff from the hospital, and that's when the officers learned that shots had been fired. And initial information was that the suspect may still be in the hospital. So officers kind of went into immediate response to try to limit the threat. They didn't hear any indications that there were shots being fired, but certainly in a hospital setting, that is in the back of the mind of the officers, and they wanted to make sure that if there was an active threat that they addressed it as quickly as possible. So they began locking down stairways and hallways and trying to get additional resources in there. And at the same time, they also had officers responding to the 5th floor where the security guard had been shot and injured. He was transferred to the emergency center where they were also making life-saving efforts, and he was eventually transferred to a level 1 trauma hospital for additional care. Unfortunately, that care was not successful, and he passed away. Officers did develop information that the suspect had left the hospital and was outside the hospital somewhere. They had some limited information that the suspect may be in the area of the Fred Meyer on 20th Place in Burnside. So officers responded there. They actually surrounded the store. There's a ton of police officers that were there. They evacuated the store, coordinated with staff, and did a slow, methodical search of the Fred Meyer, and they determined there was no threat there, and no one was injured. So the information about the suspect went out to officers, and really officers region-wide, and an East Precinct sergeant broadcast information that they were behind a vehicle that they believe the suspect was inside. They were coordinating responses and eventually conducted a traffic stop on the vehicle in the area of 181st and Everett in Gresham. Gresham police officers were there really quickly and were able to help, as was the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office deputies. So once the officers determined that the suspect we were looking for was in that vehicle, they actually sent additional resources from here and that included the Special Emergency Response Team and the Crisis Negotiation Team. Many of you were already on scene when some of that process was happening. You may have heard a bunch of officers leave with lights and sirens. That's where they were going to assist on that scene in Gresham. Once they got out to Gresham, there was a tactical effort there to negotiate with the suspect. During the confrontation, shots were fired by the police, and the suspect is deceased. So we have primarily the scene here of the homicide, and then we have the officer-involved shooting scene in Gresham. And so those two locations are active crime scenes right now. We are, you may have heard this already, but just to reiterate, we have completed the on-scene investigation at the hospital and have released the hospital to hospital staff where they'll be lifting the shelter-in-place order. And as they're able to, we'll be getting the hospital back to normal operations. Our focus right now is to work with Gresham Police and the East County Major Crimes Team who are investigating the officer-involved shooting incident out there in Gresham.
Do you know the suspect's name?
I do, but we're not releasing that right now.
Can you confirm that it happened in the stairwell?
All I know is that it happened on the 5th floor. I don't know if it was in a hallway or a stairwell or where. I can't confirm that there were no patients that were injured.
As far as hospital questions, is there something coming?
You know, they said they were coming. I know that they're still trying to coordinate reopening the hospital. So if you...
Because I know they said that families, I don't know if it's up to families or are they still taking patients in now?
Yeah, I do not know, and I don't want to speak for them. But as soon as we're done here, I'll be happy to give them a ring and ask if they're able to come out and give you guys an update. Good? Cool.